Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching the John Woodard Show. We have the pleasure of interviewing Congressman Mark Walker. He was a member of Congress and got redistricted out, and now he's seeking the office of senator to replace retiring Richard Burr. Good morning, Mark. How are you this morning?
John, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today.
It's my pleasure. So you were in D.C., you're now back home. How did things go for you up there this week?
Things keep me pretty busy, that's for sure. We're spending much more time in North Carolina, traveling the state. Just spoke Sunday morning in a town called Roanoke Rapids, and we'll be in Wilmington, probably getting in late tomorrow. Actually, Statesville tomorrow night, driving from Statesville to Wilmington tomorrow evening for a couple events there. So I love it. I love being out there, meeting the people, and it's trust me, you get a little better perspective in North Carolina than you do up there in the swamp.
Oh, buddy, I know that's true. I used to live up there years ago, and boy, I tell you, when you talk about the swamp, it's just getting swampier every day, isn't it?
There's no question. It's one of the reasons I never moved my family to Washington, D.C. is because, as a pastor for 16 years, your mindset is to be one of service. And that means you need to be coming back here, working, connecting, building those bridges, building those relationships, and listening. Some of the best policy ideas that we ever implemented actually came from people on the ground that we were able to take back and introduce.
Mark, your voice is a little soft. Can you speak up a little bit or get a little closer to the mic?
I'll scoot up a little bit closer.
There you go. You're much better now. Well, let's get right to the heart of what everybody wants to know is, I think, is what was your reaction at the convention when Trump came out? Your heart must have sunk down into your stomach.
A little bit it did. We did know that there was a little bit of tension between Mark Meadows and I over the years. When I endorsed Madison Cawthorn, Mark Meadows' wife's best friend was also running in that race. I was the only member to do so. I think that aggravated Mr. Meadows some, and I understand. So I know he's been kind of working President Trump on the endorsement. Was it disappointing? It is, because among the entire delegation, we are rated the #1 America First pro-Trump conservative score. In fact, Project 538 did a study. We would be the #1 U.S. senator, 2 points higher than Ted Cruz when it comes to the way that we have voted the last 6 years in the U.S. Congress. So was it a little disappointing? It was, but sometimes inside politics, somebody like President Trump, you're as good as the people that are advising you. And I hope that within time, over the next 2 to 3 months, people will not only look at our record, but they'll look at our ability to be effective in Washington, D.C. Is it about pushing the right button? It is, but having the ability to go up there and getting done and fighting these liberal whack jobs, you have to be willing to do that as well.
Well, you weren't the only guy in the room that whose heart was in his stomach, and Pat McCrory. I haven't spoken to Pat since that night. I probably should have, but I've been, the critical race theory has been pushing all my buttons ever since we got back. But I'm sure that he took it on the chin that night too. I haven't spoken to him to find out how he's doing, but
yeah.
But both of you guys you're working to try and separate yourselves from Ted Budd. You've got more experience in Congress than he does, don't you?
We have a lot more, and not only do we have a lot more experience, if you look at the work that we were able to get done, we became the first member in congressional history to be elected by our colleagues to chair the largest conservative caucus in all of Congress, formerly chaired by Mike Pence and Jim Jordan. 2 months after I was elected to that post, I reached out to Mike Pence and I said, Mr. Vice President, if I get everybody in the room, we'll do 2 things that Republicans have been promising for 7 years. Now, I had only been in office 1 term. I got it done. I reached out. We had these meetings. 4 weeks later, we wrapped up the package. I got a call from the White House late one Thursday night. They said, we think this is done. So we went over there, took about 14 of our team with us. And there's a great picture of President Trump and I shaking hands the very moment that we were able to repeal it. I'm also the last member of Congress to force a vote on a balanced budget limit on the House floor. And that's why I say Mr. Budd's a decent person. But what happens is when you have these super PACs come in and give you millions of dollars, they call you and influence how you vote. These super PACs have never given me millions of dollars, nor are they going to influence my vote. Because here's what I've learned, John, is that once you surrender that voting card to the swamp, you never get it back. And that swamp's as deep on the Republican side as it is on the Democrat side.
Oh, buddy, I know that that's true. They're not spending millions of dollars because they like your smile.
That's exactly right.
They expect payback somewhere along the line, and you just don't know when that hand grenade's going to land in your lap.
No, you're right. And I give you a specific example. Your instincts are spot on there, John. On the Farm Bill, when President Trump, Kristi Noem, Ron DeSantis, and myself pushed that as conservatives as we could, it's only reauthorized every 5 years. The one super PAC that's put millions of dollars in there for Bud called both Bud and me and said, you got to vote against this. And I said, I'm not voting against this. I'm working with the president on it. But Mr. Bud felt like he had to vote against it and did such. And of course, we supported it. But doesn't mean he's a bad guy. You just have to be careful letting these guys have too much influence on the way you vote.
Well, with the money comes the influence. And if you want the money in the future, you've got to pony up every time they call one way or the other. And you can end that relationship real quickly, whether you want to or not. If you've got a choice to make,
you're right,
between your principles and your financial interest.
You're right. I would suggest that you don't start that relationship to begin with. When we ran in 2014, we had $8,000 cash on hand, which press said would be impossible to win. This is 4 or 5 months before the primary. But you know who showed up? Grassroots, evangelicals. They showed up and said, you know what? We're supporting Mark Walker, and I'm grateful if they did. I wouldn't have served 6 years in the House if it was all just based on the money.
Well, the money's, the milk of politics, they say, and the mother's milk of politics. What is John McCain used to talk about taking money out of politics. I don't think that was a realistic goal on his part. But where do you come down with that? I mean, I understand that you don't want to get on that train to start with, but
no, it's a great question.
But you still got to have money to run.
You do. And we're raising money every day, but 83% of every dollar that we've taken in has come from North Carolinians. We've got some family and friends. I pastored some in Florida early in my ministry, so you work that. But I think to your point, what my concern is it's not how much money you raise, but where the money comes from. So when you've got all this money coming in from New York and California or Washington, D.C., who are you beholden to? And that's where I feel like, I don't have legislation written on this, but I think there ought to be some kind of percentage or cap put on what outside money, because donors in San Francisco shouldn't be impacting a U.S. Senate race in North Carolina to some degree. I believe that that's where we eventually have to go. I don't have the greatest wisdom in the sense as far as how does that look like from a legal standpoint. I've messed around with some of it, but we ought to get back to the people who are electing, in this case, a U.S. senator should be the ones that have the most influence, even on the financial side of things.
How do you feel about the Citizens United decision in that regard?
I can't go all the way in. I think there's problems even with the Citizens United process. So I'm not there. And until I could get this right, I wouldn't put any legislation on it. But I just don't think our founding fathers intended. For example, Chuck Schumer, they're going to bring in about $200 million to make this the most expensive U.S. Senate race in history. I got a problem with that. because what they're doing is basically influencing the outcome of the very people of North Carolina and who they want as U.S. Senate. Now, you got to raise enough money to counter that, as we talked about. But to me, at my core, there's just something wrong about the fact that they can do that. That Chuck Schumer can spend $200 million when the primary bulk of that money has nothing to do with North Carolina.
Well, we have seen instances, though, of races that were won by people that were outspent and outraised and still made the grade with the public and got into office. So I guess you're kind of hoping for a repeat of that, aren't you?
Oh, you're talking to one of those people. Yes. Now we're holding our own. We have we raised over $200,000 this past quarter. I think we're right at $1 million we've raised so far this year. I just never have been one, John, to build relationships with people based on some financial transaction. And consultants tell me all the time, you got to ask more, you got to do more. But I want people to know this is about service first. And we, as a person of faith, I believe the Lord will provide what is needed. We're going to continue to work. But my first engagement with people is not to ask for some political contribution. I want to earn their trust first. And if we can do that, then the rest of it, what I have seen, a lot of times takes care of itself.
I was down in Dare County as a guest speaker at the Dare County monthly meeting dealing with critical race theory, and I was introduced to a lady named Lee that says she knows you pretty well.
Yes, yes, Lee Sudbrink. I applaud. For people that are willing, there's an awakening going on, even with in the suburban area. I'm hoping that this critical race theory, even though there's been problems in our education system for decades, I'm hoping that people will wake up. And Lee is one of those people over the last 2 or 3 years. She's all in, and great to have certainly her support. But the fact that people in the different communities are saying, we finally reached this breaking point. I'm hoping that's real, because too much has already been lost. So I'm hoping all of us are ready to fight the fight.
Well, if we're not, our children's future is at stake, but I think that it's really part of a much broader debate, fight, if you will, about the implementation of racism and tearing down the capitalist economic system that we now enjoy.
100%, John. Again, spot on. If you peel back enough layers, and this is what I found in 6 years in serving the U.S. House, for the left, it's about control. So their strategy is to divide and conquer, because the more division that you can create, the more you can centralize the control among the bureaucrats in D.C. That's the whole measure. And it's one of the things that has driven me to get out there and work hard in the minority communities to show that, to prove that their leaders have propagated a false gospel, if you will, for lack of better expression, and have basically lied to them about history, about prosperity. In fact, I spoke at Elizabeth City State University. I was the only elected Republican to give a commencement address at one of our historical Black colleges and universities. At the same time, have a 100% conservative score rating. I talked about that you're fearfully and wonderfully made. Don't let the federal government put a ceiling on the potential. Don't buy into this victimhood that your leaders are trying to convince you of. It's a huge problem, but that division comes from these race baiters, if you will, to be able to create that division where they can keep control.
One of the things that, everybody's been talking about for quite some time now, besides critical race theory, is the COVID-19 and its origins, and the despicable display between Anthony Fauci and Senator Paul yesterday. The administration already has the National Guard out in North Carolina going door to door. Do you approve of that?
No, not at all. No, that's a personal attack to our very liberty. Last 2 years, John, I was the ranking member on intelligence and counterterrorism for Committee on Homeland Security, on our subcommittee there. And I will tell you, I did a deep dive on this, studied the Wuhan, the gain of function. And I think I agree with Rand Paul that if we're able to prove that Anthony Fauci spent taxpayers' dollars on this gain of function research, that if he sent money to Wuhan to do this when it's illegal, I think he's committed a crime and should be held accountable. But to the heart of your question, absolutely not. I think you're talking Gestapo-style tactics. That's communism in its purest form, when the government is using their own military to go and enforce topics and issues that have no bearings in the federal government.
Well, it's all part and parcel of the same control issues. I mean, what is his name? Klaus Schwab with the World Economic Forum, says that he believes that the COVID-19 will be the key that unlocks the door to socialism in America.
I don't know that I disagree with him on it. And this COVID testing was a great model for the left to see how many liberties that Americans are willing to give up.
Well, they were fed a belief that this was absolutely necessary, and that their lives were at stake if they didn't take the shot. Well, in fact, doctors like Peter McCullough out at Baylor University went into Congress and told them that hydroxychloroquine and other alternative medications would probably solve the problem. I'm not sure whether I'm using the right emphasis here. He may have been even stronger than that. But, nevertheless, the government pushed this vaccine on us. And I think that with the big tech censorship that's flowed from that, not only that, but other things, but just to stay on that subject, I believe that the trial lawyers in this country are just licking their chops to get a little further along. In fact, one trial lawyer in Alabama has already sued the federal government. So, Katie, bar the door.
Yeah, it's going to be a field day in that particular practice. But the larger issue of what you're talking about, John, is you're spot on when it comes to it used to be 10 years ago when I was starting paying attention to politics. It used to be big government, and they try to do a lot of this behind the scenes. What we have seen change in the last few years is now it's in your face and dare you to try and stop us. That's the challenge in the 21st century. Conservatism, liberty, freedom, of what we're talking about here today. That's the challenge that we're facing, and that's why people in our neighborhoods, in our schools, heck, I'm even talking to some of the pastors to get off their backsides and engage, because this is spiritual warfare. This just isn't just political. We're battling evil right now. And for pastors to tell me that, hey, this isn't our battle, well, who the heck do you expect to fight it? So we're trying to get people engaged and get out there, because this impacts all of us.
Well, this is a huge problem, and in fact, several months ago, I guess 6 months ago, I had in my possession, still have, a letter on Adam Schiff's congressional stationery, where he sent this letter to the presidents of YouTube, Google, and Twitter, suggesting that they censor posts on their platforms that were inconsistent with the World Health Organization view of the origination of the COVID virus. As a member of Congress and an officer of the federal government, that was extremely dangerous. He created an agency relationship between himself and these big tech presidents, and then all they did is walk through an open door with respect to everything else.
Yeah, no question. And I will tell you this, and a lot of it's become public. The relationship with the WHO and China, who certainly wants to submarine and become the number one world power over us, for Adam Schiff to go out there and promote knowing. See, here's the thing. Adam Schiff sees the same intelligence that I have and this administration has. He knows the truth. So for people like him to do this, this is not accidental. It's not just incompetence. This is very intentional on his part to submarine, once again, our liberties to be able to gain more control. The problem is these idiots don't understand when you're dealing with China. I've traveled to 20-something different countries. When you're dealing with people like Russia and China, these smaller countries over there will tell you, you can't negotiate with these folks. They have one agenda, and that is to bring us down. So when you have somebody who is the chair of the Intelligence Committee that's propagating this kind of information, you have to know 100% there's a motive behind it.
The Chinese will slap you on the back as long as you're doing their bidding, and then they'll stab you in the back as soon as you're not. And anybody that doesn't realize that is a fool. Well, we could talk all day, and you're a very nice man. I wish you a lot of luck in your campaign. We could talk about the subjects of the day in the news. Give us one last pitch for
Sure.
our viewers that will help them understand why you're the best man for the job of this for the Senate seat.
Exactly. Well, we live in a purple state, so you've got to find a conservative that can beat whatever liberal they put up. But here's the kind of people that support us, that know us. Every sheriff that I've ever represented in Congress has come out and already endorsed us. In fact, some of those sheriffs are in Ted Budd's district that have endorsed us. We're the only candidate that has any sheriff endorsement at this point, 12 and growing. We've also been endorsed by Mike Huckabee, Clarence Henderson, Madison Cawthorn, Senator Tim Scott, Mick Mulvaney, the co-founder of the Freedom Caucus. I could go on and on. The people on the ground here in the Triad area, 33 have endorsed. All 33 have endorsed, 0 for Mr. Budd and 0 for Mr. McCrory. So the people who know us best know that we're a warrior, but we're also a warrior that has a record of accomplishment. That's the kind of person that I think you need to support in beating back Sherry Beasley or whoever the Democrats put up.
Well, I have to, in expressing my own view on the situation to an extent, Sherry Beasley is a very nice lady, but your real battle is against Ted Budd, I think. Don't you agree?
Well, I think so. I saw an article in the Observer today. They did not get the bump that they thought they would from the Trump endorsement. They're still in the 20% as far as the percentage. Latest poll, Pat is still leading. Pat McCrory, former governor, still leading. So people have to ask themselves, do you support a former governor who's running on the 4th time but only won once? And if you don't, then who is the best conservative to be able to get this across the finish line? We think over the next 3 or 4 months that we will show why so many people, grassroots conservatives, are endorsing us. That's not to disrespect the president at all. But when it comes to the people on the ground that fight the fight every day, we're going to be the choice. We're going to be the people's choice. And I think we're going to be able to prove that by the end of the year.
Well, buddy, I wish you a lot of luck. When I was in the press area at the convention, and I was when he stepped up there, I thought he was going to say something magnanimous. What I had no idea that he was going to come out with this endorsement of Ted Budd, whom I knew that he had a relationship with, but I had no idea that it would manifest itself in presidential endorsement from the podium of a state convention. A lot of people think that he made a big mistake with that, but that's his style. And but I'm sure that he'll support you if you're the candidate. But
absolutely,
it's a tough slog, isn't it?
It is. I was just in Texas speaking at CPAC. I was with Don Jr. and Kimberly Guilfoyle and some of the guys there. So I think in time, I don't want to be over predictive. I think in time the president will reevaluate some of this, especially with Mr. Budd not being able to gain traction at this point. So we'll see what happens, but we're committed to our message. It's one of the reasons that we won the straw poll so handsomely there at the GOP convention. We're going to keep building on that. And we have a certain level of confidence. Our hope is in the Lord, and we're going to keep working as hard as we can.
Are you running a whole state campaign, or are you focused on the hot spots that you you need to win, and ignoring the areas where that are probably going to go Democrat anyway?
No, sir, not at all. That's why Pat McCrory lost the last time, in my opinion.
Exactly.
We're in the East. We're in the West. I was in a county of 30,000 people on Sunday. I'm going to work at any place that we get invited. We're going to load up. I've driven 47,000 miles this year on my F-150, and we're going to keep getting it done.
Well, I wish you a lot of luck. You're a wonderful guy, and everybody that knows you speaks highly of you, and you've got a good record in Congress. And I wish you a lot of luck, and hope that we can talk again sometime when you get a little further along in your campaign, and we'll see how things are going then. And I appreciate you coming on with us today. Thank you very much.
My privilege, John. Look forward to seeing you again soon. God bless.
God bless you, buddy. Bye-bye.